$2.41. That is what I earned per hour in my garden last season. Harvest valued at grocery store prices, every dollar of cost subtracted. I know this because last January, I sat down at the kitchen table with a shoebox full of receipts, a calculator, and the kind of stubbornness that used to make me grade final exams twice. I wanted the real number, not a guess, not a feeling, not, it probably saves money. The real number. It took me most of a Sunday morning, and the answer was not what I expected. I am going to walk through every dollar. Seeds to harvest, nothing left out. If you have ever wondered whether a backyard garden saves money or costs it, this is the breakdown I wish someone had shown me 3 years ago, with actual receipts, not estimates. The shoebox had receipts from 3 seasons, but I pulled out the 3rd year only, the one where I finally stopped making expensive beginner mistakes and ran what I would call a normal garden. 6 raised beds, roughly 14 square meters total, growing tomatoes, lettuce, bush beans, zucchini, peppers, herbs, and a short row of carrots. Seeds cost me $18. I bought from 2 catalogs and 1 local hardware store. 12 packets total, 4 vegetable varieties from the catalog at $2 each. The rest from the hardware store at $1 to $1.50 each. $18 is not much, but I want to be honest. I also had seeds left over from the previous year that I did not count. Maybe another $6 or $7 worth if I had bought them fresh. So call the real seed cost somewhere around $20 to $24 for anyone starting from zero. Soil amendments came to $24. I did not buy bag soil. I used the soil already in the beds, which I have been improving for 3 years with mulch and compost. But I did buy 1 bag of lime for $6 because a soil test showed my pH had drifted low, and I bought 2 bags of composted manure from the feed store at $9 each. The soil test itself was free through the county extension office, which is something I wish I had known in year 1. I spent $40 on a home testing kit my first season that gave me numbers I did not know how to read. Tools were the biggest single-year cost, $45. I already owned the basics, a shovel, a rake, a hoe, a watering can. But that spring my old garden fork snapped at the handle, and I replaced it for $22. I also bought a new pair of pruning shears for $13 and a soil thermometer for $10 because I wanted to track ground temperature through the season. Someone who already has tools pays $0 here. Someone starting fresh, fork, trowel, rake, shears, watering can, is looking at $60 to $70 at a hardware store, and those last for years. Water cost me $32 for the season. I calculated this from my water bill, comparing the summer months to the winter baseline. June through September, my bill ran about $8 a month higher than the months I was not watering. This was my 2nd year using the deep watering method, once or twice a week, slowly, with mulch. So the number was already much lower than my first year. When I watered every day, the summer spike was closer to $20 a month. Mulch saved me real money on water, not a metaphor, measurable on the bill. Fence and bed repairs came to $21. One section of my rabbit fence needed a new post, which I patched with a piece of cedar I bought for $11. I also replaced 2 boards on bed number 3 that had started to rot. $10 for the lumber. These are the costs people forget. Gardens need maintenance, and wood in contact with soil does not last forever. I would estimate $10 to $25 a year for small repairs, depending on how old the beds are. Miscellaneous, $12. Tomato stakes, string for trellising the beans, a roll of row cover fabric I used once to protect early lettuce from a late frost. Small purchases that add up more than expected. I started keeping these receipts in the 2nd year after I realized I had been spending $15 or $20 on things I did not even track. That brings the total investment for 1 growing season to roughly $152. Seeds, soil, tools, water, repairs, supplies. Every dollar I could find a receipt for. Now the other side, what came out of those beds. I weighed my harvest last year, roughly. Not with laboratory precision, I used a kitchen scale and a notebook, recording each pick through the season. Tomatoes, about 14 kilograms from 4 plants, a mix of slicers and cherries. Lettuce, 8 kilograms across 3 succession plantings. Bush beans, 6 kilograms from 2 beds. Zucchini, 11 kilograms from 2 plants. And if you have ever grown zucchini, you know that number could have been higher if I had picked them before they turned into baseball bats. Peppers, 4 kilograms. Herbs, basil, parsley, cilantro, roughly a kilogram total, which does not sound like much until you price fresh herbs at the store. Carrots, 3 kilograms, all of them crooked in ways that would embarrass a grocery display. To put a dollar value on that harvest, I walked through the produce section at my nearest grocery store with a notepad. Not the organic section, regular produce, regular prices. Tomatoes, about $4 a kilogram. Lettuce, roughly $3 a kilogram for the loose leaf variety I grow. Beans, $4.50. Zucchini, $2.50. Peppers, $5. Fresh herbs, anywhere from $15 to $20 a kilogram, which is the one number that actually made me stop and blink. Carrots, $2 a kilogram. I multiplied everything out. Tomatoes came to roughly $56, lettuce $24, beans $27, zucchini $28, peppers $20. Herbs, and this is where the pencil paused, somewhere between $15 and $20 for that single kilogram, because store basil comes in tiny plastic packets at $3 each. Carrots $6. A few extras I did not track carefully, a handful of radishes here, some green onions there. I estimated conservatively at $10. Total harvest value at grocery store prices, roughly $190 to $200. Call it $195. I sat back in my chair. $195 of produce from $152 of inputs. A profit of $43 for the season. When I taught economics, I did 1 year as a substitute before the biology position opened. I would have called that a 28% return on investment. Not bad for a savings account. Terrible for a summer of work. Because then I counted the hours. I did not log my garden time with a stopwatch, but I kept a rough record in the same notebook where I tracked the harvest. Planting days, weeding sessions, watering rounds, harvesting mornings. I added them up. 112 hours across the growing season, roughly late April through late September. Some weeks were heavy, spring planting, the July weeding push. Some weeks were light, the slow stretch of August where the work is mostly picking and watering. 112 hours over 5 months works out to about 5.5 hours a week on average. $43 of net value divided by 112 hours. I entered it in the calculator and stared at it. 38 cents an hour. I recalculated. The total harvest value, $195, divided by 112 hours. That comes to $1.74 an hour. If I ignore the costs entirely and pretend the seeds and tools were free, the garden paid me $1.74 for every hour I stood in it. Federal minimum wage is $7.25. I was earning less than a quarter of that. I sat at that table for a while. My coffee was cold. The receipts were spread out in little piles, organized by category with a neatness that would have made my 10th grade lab reports proud. And the calculator was showing me a number that was, by any financial measure, ridiculous. A friend of mine, a retired accountant named Bill, asked me over lunch the next week whether the garden was worth it. I showed him the numbers. He looked at the page, took a sip of his coffee and said, "You would make more money picking up aluminum cans on the roadside." He was not wrong. I looked it up later. Aluminum goes for about $1.60 per pound at the recycling center, and a good collector averages $5 to $7 an hour. My garden was underperforming a walk along the highway with a trash bag. There is a way to improve the numbers. I could save on seeds by collecting my own. Tomato and bean seeds are easy to save, and I started doing that in the third year. That cuts the seed cost to nearly zero for those varieties. I could build a rain barrel, which would reduce the water bill to almost nothing after the initial setup. Composting kitchen scraps produces free soil amendment once the pile matures, and by my third year, the compost was producing enough that I bought less bagged amendment than before. If I sharpened all three of those, seeds, water, soil, the investment might drop to $80 or $90 a season, pushing the return closer to $100 net. Still less than $1 an hour. Still below the price of roadside aluminum. So why do I keep going? I have been thinking about this since that Sunday morning with the receipts. And the honest answer has nothing to do with produce prices. The calculator counts dollars. It counts kilograms and hours. It does not count the other ledger, the one I cannot put on paper but feel in my body and in my mornings. 112 hours in the garden means 112 hours outside. Not in a gym, not on a treadmill, in daylight, in air, hands in soil, moving at the pace of someone who is paying attention to what is growing. My doctor told me 2 years ago that my blood pressure had dropped and asked what I had changed. I said I stopped watching the morning news and started checking on my tomatoes instead. She laughed. She also said to keep doing it. There is a specific moment each morning, 6:15, maybe 6:30, when I walk out with coffee and stand at the edge of bed 1. The air is cool. The plants are wet. Something has changed overnight, and finding it is the first small task of the day. A new flower. A bean pod that doubled in size. A slug trail across the lettuce that means I need to set traps. For 20 minutes each morning, I am solving small, real problems in a world I can touch. When I went back to that routine after a week away visiting family last August, I noticed the difference in my head before I noticed it in the garden. Quieter, more patient, less noise. I graded papers for 30 years. Every September, I would sit at this same kitchen table with a stack of lab reports, a red pen, and a rubric. The math was the same: points divided by criteria, percentage calculated, letter grade assigned. The rubric measured what the student wrote. It could not measure whether the student understood. A kid who scored 72% and came to my desk with a question she had been thinking about since Tuesday was further along than the kid who scored 95 and forgot the material by Friday. The grade was real. It was also incomplete. The garden works the same way. $152 in, $195 out, $43 net, 38 cents an hour. Every number is accurate, and none of them describe what I actually got. I got mornings. I got soil under my fingernails at breakfast. I got the evening in late July when I picked the first ripe tomato, still warm, and ate it standing between the beds with juice running down my wrist. That tomato was not worth $4 a kilogram. That tomato was an entire season arriving in one bite. 94 days from seed to mouth, every one of them mine. I do not know how to price that on a receipt. I got the afternoon I spent sitting on an overturned bucket between beds 2 and 3, watching a bumblebee work through every pepper flower in a slow, systematic orbit. 14 flowers, one after another, each visit about 3 seconds. The bee did not know I was there. I did not want it to. For 10 minutes I sat still and watched something ancient do its work. And when it left, I went inside and did not turn on the television. My neighbor asked me in October whether the garden saved me money. I said it cost me $152, earned me $195, and paid me less than the price of a candy bar for every hour I spent in it. She looked confused. I said, "The calculator is not wrong. It counts everything it knows how to count. The things it does not know how to count are the reason I will be out there again in April. 112 hours, 38 cents each. Every one of them worth more than the receipt says. Tomorrow I am looking at something I found on every seed pack in my drawer. A piece of advice printed in small type that turns out to be wrong for at least 5 vegetables I grow. The packets say, full sun. My garden says otherwise.